What's up, YouTube? This is Morgan, also known as Jew, and this is going to be, from a Georgia Tech fan's perspective, the breakdown of the game versus number 24 Pitt of the 2022 season. Now, I will say this was not the prettiest game in terms of general. The weather was not great. The play on the field offensively necessarily was questionable at times, but other than that, this is just going to be a breakdown of my thoughts of players, of play calling, of coaching, etc. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, I am recording this with about 20 seconds left in the game. Pitt is currently in the red zone. The score is 26-14. Now, I will let anything know. Obviously, you will also know the finale result of it, but as of right now, it is 26-14. This was not a great Jeff Sims game by any means. The first half was a very big struggle for him and the entire offense for both teams in general, as the halftime score was 7-6 Pitt. Pitt's only touchdown being within the final 2 minutes of that first half. Now, okay, Pitt just scored a touchdown with about 14 seconds left. So this could be very premature, and they somehow managed to win it. All it will take is a onside kick, and I would be very depressed, and that'd be awful watching in real time. Now, back to the game. So the three big players I had for this game, in terms of who made an impact, is going to be Hassan Hall, Gavin Stewart, and Charlie Thomas. Now, Charlie Thomas did only play one half, just in general. So as of right now, the additions that I'm using do not say what Charlie Thomas is. Okay, Georgia Tech landed on the onside kick. That is going to most likely be the ball game. So yeah, my three main players: Hassan Hall, Charlie Thomas, and Gavin Stewart. Now, Brent, the interim head coach for Georgia Tech, did make the decision to stick with Gavin Stewart after the kicking struggles that Georgia Tech has had all season. I think that it was a huge question of why we had two kickers in the first place. I was talking with one of my friends about it. Why have a different place kicker than your kickoff kicker? It just doesn't make any sense. Gavin Stewart did go for 4 for 4. He made a 40-yarder, which should be an easy one for most kickers, but with Georgia Tech's history, it has not been their most solid piece, I guess to say. Hassan Hall had 20 carries for 157 yards. Didn't have a touchdown. He had a near touchdown. His longest run was 63 yards, which basically sealed the game. It led to Georgia Tech getting another touchdown with, I believe, who ran it in? I don't quite remember who ran it in, but somebody ran it in. Was it Jeff? It was Jeff Sims. I'm dumb. It was just Jeff Sims. Jeff Sims did have a much better game with his legs, I will say. 19 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown. Did have a 42-yard carry. Wasn't very... he also did have a big loss during one of his runs near the end of the game, just trying to run out the clock. And Jeff Sims, while he did not pass the ball entirely well, he made the right decision of when to throw and when to run, which is much better than previous games that even this season. Last 2 seasons it had been look through one option then run. This season had been look through 3 to 4 guys, stay in the pocket, which was killing Jeff Sims. Now he was making his decisions a lot quicker. Sure, a lot of his passes were incomplete or off the mark, but the throws that he needed to make, in all honesty, were made. He had the one touchdown throw to, I believe, E.J. Jenkins, Nate McCollum, or it was E.J. Jenkins. E.J. Jenkins had two receptions for 54 yards. Now, there were a few balls that were placed a little bit behind or a little bit off, or whatever. But at the end of the day, as my dad has always said, a win's a win's a win's a win. They did pull it out. Charlie Thomas, on the other end, let me look at the stats that I can at least have for it. I can't get his tackles. Had the interception and the fumble recovery that were huge, and he did have quite a few tackles, at least in the third quarter. I think he had 6 or 7. Only playing the second half, Charlie Thomas really changed the entire game, in a sense. Everything in terms of momentum swung in Georgia Tech's favor. And then Gavin Stewart going 4 for 4 was probably the biggest thing. Yeah, sure, Pitt got a garbage time touchdown, and it made it a little close. But at the end of the day, Brent is 1-0 in the Brent era. It also shows that Georgia Tech was playing very scared. I think that they had a lot more confidence in this game, and they looked like they were actually playing for something and not just, hey, let's go out and play a football game just for fun. Ace Ely continues to be a dominant presence for Georgia Tech. The use of the tight ends was a lot more prevalent with Dylan Leonard. And honestly, I didn't have an issue with a lot of the play calling. There were some that I'm like, what are you doing? But also, those happen. There's a reason I'm not the offensive coordinator or the play caller. The Nate McCullum play where he had the incomplete throw, or Nate McCullum backwards pass. I honestly didn't really have an issue with it. Dylan Leonard was wide open, and Nate McCullum just put a little too much zip on it, and it was a little too far. Now, on the other side for Pitt, Keaton Slovis had a honestly very horrific game. He threw for 305 and 3 touchdowns with an interception. He also threw the ball 45 fucking times. Vincent Davis ran all over Georgia Tech, but they didn't. Yeah, they got the yardage, but Georgia Tech played a great bend don't break defense. They didn't let them get too much momentum. They had a 1-point lead, and that's all they had the entire game. Both of Pitt's touchdowns in the fourth quarter were responded to by Georgia Tech. Or one of them was. The other one was just garbage time, basically. Israel Abanikanda. I don't know how to say it. Israel Abanikanda. He did get injured from what it looks like early in the game. And he had a 3-yard average. It still wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. He is their main back. But Vincent Davis continues his dominance over Georgia Tech, even though he didn't get the win. In terms of receiving, really the only one that stood out was Jared Wayne and Gavin Bartholomew for Pitt. Nothing a whole lot too much to say on the Pitt side because I don't know them a whole lot. I just know what I see. Other than that, this is a great sign for the Georgia Tech era. Duke is a very hungry team, and from what it looks like, a very good team this year. But I also think Georgia Tech's a much different team, mindset-wise, not necessarily play style-wise or in terms skill-wise. Nothing's changed. But I think from terms of mentality, I still do think that they won't make a bowl game this year. But I think Brent Key is making a solid case of why he should get a head coaching job. Not necessarily with Georgia Tech, but at least somewhere. He just knows the game of football. It's very clear. And he made a much-needed change in practice, which was that Georgia Tech can't play scared. That press conference where it introduced Brent Key, it was honestly a breath of fresh air. I don't even know what else to say. He said all the right things without getting us excited. He didn't have to say what we wanted to hear. He said what needed to be said, which is it's incredible. He said that basically Jeff Collins was kind of coaching like he was waiting for something bad to happen rather than going to make something good happen, which obviously showed a lot today. The Charlie Thomas interception and the 2 fumbles that were forced by the Georgia Tech defense. Georgia Tech's defense played honestly out of its freaking mind today. Yeah, the stats don't necessarily show it in terms of yards given up, but it was very clear that Georgia Tech's defense came to play. They let up yards, but they made the plays. They made something good happen, which is just completely different from the coach Jeff Collins era. Now, Georgia Tech going on, they're going to be 2-3, 1-1 in the conference. Do I think they go much with this win? No, I truly don't. I think this is just a breath of fresh air, and it honestly gives Georgia Tech confidence. And now the rest of the season, it will just be go have fun, play football, play for something. The season still isn't over for Georgia Tech. They still have a lot of games remaining. Georgia looked very vulnerable against Missouri, which is a very good sign. Now, Georgia Tech does play them at the end of the season. They have a lot of time to fix everything. And honestly, I have no expectations for Georgia Tech going into that Georgia game at the end of the season. But I think that Georgia, against Kent State and against Missouri, shows signs of vulnerability, which honestly could lead for Georgia Tech to come right up from under. Now, that is going to be the end of this video. I'm going to be doing Georgia Tech breakdowns after every game every week. If any of this type of content, Georgia Tech, college football, sports in general, interests you, please subscribe down below. If you like the video, please comment anything you'd like to see or any thoughts on the game you had as well. I'm going to be out. Peace.